Welcome to Real Talk TV. I'm your host, Darryl Buchanan. And first, I'd like to say thank you to all the support who support Real Talk TV. Actually, continue to look at the videos, leave some comments, press the like button, share with your friends, and please subscribe to this channel. I'm very happy to bring this subject matter to you guys. And today I have a very, very, very important guest that I'd like to introduce. His name is Joseph Irizarry. He's a community organizer for CELWAP, which is a campaign to end life without parole. It's a very, very important issue that is on the floor today. And I'd like to just go ahead and introduce Joseph. Joseph, can you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself and who you are?
Yeah, no, certainly. So I'm Joseph Irizarry, community organizer for the campaign to end life without parole. I've been doing the job for about a year now. There was a slight hiccup within my employment, regarding my parole situation and stuff like that. But nevertheless, I took on the job simply because I know what it's like to serve a life sentence in prison. And I sit back and I think about, the individuals that are still inside behind those walls, and because their voice cannot be heard, I think it was important for me to extend mine. So that's one of the main reasons why I took on the job.
Cool. So I don't know if you can or if you want to, when you little talk about how did you get your life sentence? What happened? I mean, matter of fact, a better question is, what kind of environment created that?
Wow. So I'll flash forward to my first parole hearing, and then flash backward towards how my life started.
Let's get it, yeah.
So my first parole hearing was 2016. And after I seen the parole board, during the parole board, one of the parole board members had stated that she could read my life, everything that I went through, and could have already predicted me serving a life sentence.
Wow.
So for me, that just meant that she acknowledged the amount of trauma that I went through growing up, but also the amount of neglect and abuse that occurred, right? But not just so much as with my family or foster care system that I grew up in, it was because of the whole state system that I was just neglected, So going into a short recap about my life, I was born in the South Bronx, 1980. It's the end of, more or less the Bronx burning era, right? All the debilitated buildings. It's the beginning of hip hop, the beginning of the crack epidemic, right? Everything is just beginning and ending all at once. For me, I was just growing up in a normal environment, used to seeing big rats in the neighborhood, used to seeing dirty mattresses that me and my friends used to use as trampolines. We call them ghetto trampolines, right? We used to use them in the hood. You familiar with this, you know what I'm saying? And we'll do backflips, we'll wrestle, you know what I'm saying? And this was normal to us. Normal to us was also seeing the amount of violence in our community. I recall about age 4 or 5, the first time I ever witnessed a violent act in the community, and I had asked my father about it. And I said, Dad, you just lied to the police right now, because we was, back in the days, the police used to walk the beat, right? So police officer had stopped my father as my father, my mother, myself, and my older brother were walking into the building, and had asked if we had witnessed the shooting that occurred earlier that day. So eventually, comes to find out somebody was murdered. My father said no. And he kept asking. My father was like, no, we was gone all day. We went to go visit my wife's sister, and that's where we were. So we don't know what happened. Got into the building, for me, was like, oh, my pops just lied. Like, we're not supposed to lie, right? So I asked Dad, why did you lie to the police? And he turned around, grabbed me, he said, we don't talk to police. We don't tell police nothing. So that was my first lesson on don't be a snitch.
Exactly.
Don't talk about nothing that happens in the neighborhood. One, what stays in the house, what happens in the house stays in the house, right? But also the house is an extension with the neighborhood. You know what I mean? So whatever happens out here, we don't talk about that. And I learned that lesson and I adhered to that all my life. Moving forward, witnessing domestic violence at the home, violence in the communities, we come to Massachusetts. And as soon as we get here, I noticed that my lifestyle and all the kids in Massachusetts was very different.
Not different.
You know, there was not a lot of green grass where I lived. There was not that many trees that I remember. So coming out here, I moved out here. We moved to Framingham first, and it was just like, wow, there's mad green trees, and mad green grass. There's no buildings here, you know what I'm saying? It's all houses, right? So it was just very different for me. And that's when I also knew that I really had a different state of mind than the rest of my friends. You know, when I saw things very different at a very young age, and I understood it, but didn't really truly grasp it or appreciate it as much as I do now. Within the first year of being here in Massachusetts, I went straight into the foster care system. And within the first 8 months of being in the foster care system, I went through 13 different foster homes. Damn. You know, so now mind you, this is an 8-year-old little boy that's experiencing so much home displacement. Never has he been able to settle in with any family to get some type of normalcy after leaving his own household. You know, so that was my beginning stages of being institutionalized by the state system. And it just made me shut down as a child. I mean, most children would shut down. You know, so it was just that amount of neglect by the state, the abandonment by the state by just moving me around, you know, as if I was just an item, a hot potato, so to speak. And it just shut me down to the point where I just didn't trust no family. I trusted no one. And I started to act out on that, you know, when I moved around a lot and I got into a lot of trouble and I ran away from a lot of foster homes. In some of the foster homes, I was abused. Yeah. Some of the foster homes, you know, saw me as a prize in the sense of, you know, they could collect money on me, take care of their children. Or, you know, because I have a particular mentality, they could also use me as a fighter in the projects wherever we lived. You know, so sometimes I would go out and the foster mother would be like, yeah, I want you to fight that kid. So it was like I was going through a training, you know, and then, you know, for the holidays, foster mothers will go to the stores and, you know, check out the store, come back and say, hey, go to this store on this aisle, steal this item, bring that back home, and we're gonna wrap this up for the holidays. And I used to do that, you know, because one, it was a way of connecting with these foster parents in a way where I was unable to in any other way, right? But also because, you know, it just allowed me to be a risk taker, you know, and as most little boys, we always want to take a risk, you know what I mean? So it was different, but it was also a frightening experience one day where I go to steal for the foster parents, and then as I'm running out the store because the store clerks are chasing me, you know, he grabs my feet and then my throat gets gashed up on the fence. I'm like maybe 12 years old, you know, and you know, for me was now I have to play the victim, you know, to the police officer that I was a bad kid, but I was just, you know, needing something so I could make some money. He brings me to my foster home. They yell at me for stealing, but they're the ones that encouraged it. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, looking at my whole life pattern, I was tailored to be a particular way. You know, and with that, I just ran away a lot. You know, it was up until I was 13 years old is when I really, you know, committed a real crime where, you know, the state deemed me necessary to be incarcerated in juvenile detention centers. You know, and then after that, it was a snowball effect. You know, got involved with the gangs, you know, and just continued down a path of, you know, as restorative justice says, hurt people, you know, and so I just kept unleashing this pain that I really didn't know how to relate with. You know, eventually I got to 19 after leaving the House of Corrections, been known as a fighter, and so a lot of guys in the neighborhood are just fearful of me that eventually somebody decided to pull out a gun and shoot me. You know, so they shot me down, and then it just created in me this kind of hostility that I need to lash out some more. And by the time I was 20 years old, I committed a murder, you know, that had to do with gang violence, you know, and I think about what that might mean, right? Because we coming from different paradigms, right? When we was younger, we saw the world in one lens. And as we get older, we mature, we go through different experiences that allow us to connect with something that we never really connected with, which is our emotions, right? So in two different lenses, what I did at that age, I thought was okay because it was literally a situation of kill or be killed.
Exactly.
You know, at a young age when we grow up, some of us believe that we're not gonna live past a certain age. And usually that ends at 18, right? And that was my thinking, right? So here it is, now I'm 20, 19 I got shot. Now I'm 20 years old and I'm confronted with a situation of, again, my life is in danger, right? And I'm confronted by these men that there was some squabbles with in the past, but it was a confrontation where, you know, it was just me, myself, against 7 men, and I know 2 of them had a weapon. I pulled out mine in response to what I thought was gonna be a threat to my life. Now, I'm not saying that to minimize my own actions, because that is not the case. In the lens as an adult, I should have never even had a gun, period, right? Even after the fact that I got shot, you know what I'm saying? I should have found, or there should have been some type
Somebody
of community remedy
Yeah.
in how I dealt with the violence that was directed towards me, right? As we grow up, we don't never identify with the idea of being a victim. You know, things that we go through in the neighborhood, you know, whether we get jumped, whether we get stabbed, whether we get shot or shot at, we consider that, you know, stripes to our marks
all
as a
part of the
veteran.
game, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, this is just part of the game.
Yeah.
So we put away these emotions that allow us to really connect with that victimhood. We don't do that because in our culture, we don't see that, and it's unacceptable. So this was a situation where, you know, I look at what I did now, you know, then, and I'm saying, you know, that was just a young man that knew what he was doing up to a point. But, and I say up to a point in the sense that my thought process was, I'm gonna die out here. So I need to respond faster. I need to be the one that everybody is afraid of so that I make sure that I'm safe, right? But as an older man, I'm realizing that that's not really what happens. The more afraid individuals are of you, the more they feel like they need to be safe from you. And so they will attack you, right?
Definitely.
And that's just a consistent cycle, as we know that, right? So the things that led up really to that, to my sentence, it was a sentence of murder, and I was sentenced to life in prison with the eligibility of parole after 15 years. And, you know, it was gang violence that was just callous, you know, and I think about that day, it was in April 16th, 2000, and I always keep it in my mind, and I always pay homage to that day because from my own life lessons, no person should have lost their life, you know, and that's what I've learned out of that. It took me a while to get there, but the first connecting point was the fact that the person that I did take his life away was not only just a father, but he was a son. You know, he was a brother. You know, he was a potential uncle. You know what I mean? So I think about what that meant for me growing up in foster home, being put up for adoption and then being just orphaned up until the age of 21, that I was a young man that grew up without a family, and now I took a man away from a family. You know what I mean? So there's some parallels there that I grappled with over the years that allowed me to search deep within myself.
You can see that, you know what I mean? One thing I do, you know, I do see you've done a lot of work. You were talking about restorative justice. Just the fact that you can connect and that you can get on TV or just be able to identify with this gentleman that you said, you know, that passed away, that you took his life. And that's deep. And that takes a lot. I really want to talk about a lot of that stuff too. How did we get to that place? How did that happen? Like you said, you come from one spectrum of life and one mentality of life, and then you shift. You know what I mean? And it's not an external shift, it's more of an internal shift. I like that. But I do want to know, like I said, I've done a lot of time, bro, but I've always saw that brothers that I walked the yard with life sentences and life without parole, saw it different than I did. How did you see it? And and I know they, even though we were cool, they knew I had an out date. I was going home in a few years.
Yeah.
And I kind of I never brought it to them. Like, damn, I wonder how they ever thought about that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's interesting. When I first got upstate, I went straight to Walpole. And, because they had the gang blocks back in the days. Yeah. And so they sent me straight to Walpole. I get there. I already had a mentality that I knew that I wasn't going to get paroled after 15 years. I had that in the beginning. As soon as I went to trial and my lawyer said the DA's offering a second degree, I said, if the DA wants me to do 15 years, just offer 15 years. Don't offer the life. Because I know with my mentality, I'm not gonna see that 15-year parole mark simply because I'm either gonna die in prison, somebody's gonna stab me to death, or I'm gonna have to commit some violent acts, maybe kill somebody again, just because of my mentality, right? And just because of the way I always saw myself with, the world I lived in. I always believed that I was always alone, because I grew up in foster home, alone, right? And throughout my incarceration, I continued to feel that way. So when I first came in, nobody was getting paroled, on a second degree. So I was like, well, if nobody's getting paroled, I know my mentality, I'm doing life. So I just confined myself to that notion that at any given moment, I'm gonna stab somebody, whether it was another person who was doing time or whether it was a correctional officer. And I was just what is considered a second degree. For most lifers without the eligibility of parole, they look at my sentence as having hope.
Yeah, hope, yeah.
My mentality was I had no hope, right? Wow. But it took some time for me to actually understand what that sentence meant for me. It was about within a year of me being sentenced. Well, the first couple months of me being sentenced on life, that my mother and my sister wrote me. And I haven't seen them since I was like 10 years old. Now I'm just turning 21 years old. They're back in my life. And they're back in my life at an unfortunate time, unfortunate moment. I'm serving life in prison. I have my family back, but at the cost of my life in prison. And that was something hard to swallow. And it was something
What do you mean by that? What do you mean?
In the sense that, so I say that by, I was comfortable where I was at.
Comfortable without having family, it just felt, did it feel like more of a burden?
There was no accountability to nobody. You know what I'm saying? And I grew up in a foster system where I had to learn how to survive by myself and not share with anybody. All the decisions that I made were made based on survival. And now, here it is, my family's back in my life. Now I have to consider them with my decision making. And that was hard. That was difficult because that's not what I wanted, because it just disrupted the bliss of where my life was at. Now I have to be more accountable. Now I have to be more responsible. And it didn't happen overnight. It took some years for me to finally realize the importance of my family being in my life. I think most people would automatically assume like, wow, your family's back in your life, things are good now, you're good, like you have love. It's hard to transition from a life of no love to now love is there and you're not used to that love. The love that I was used to was gang member love. Yo, go punch him in the face. Oh, yo, you good, man. I love you, bro. You know what I'm saying? Yo, let's go rob him. Yo, bro, that was a great experience. We got over that. I love you, bro.
You my guy, right?
Right? You know what I'm saying? So the love was based on violence. Now I'm having a family in my life, and now the love is based on something other than violence. It's just based on the fact that you're my relative and I love you for you. That's different. That was in my thinking a little abnormal. I was afraid of it, but I knew it was something that I needed. You know what I mean? But I was afraid to fully embrace it at that moment. So it was. That's why I say it was difficult.
Yeah. When you said that, I was like, difficult. That would be like somebody coming when I needed them the most. That's how it was. Yeah, but I can understand because if you don't have it, it's hard to accept it.
Yeah, it's very hard.
You told my story a lot, too, about the foster home. I had been through that, being switched and that. It's crazy, and I think that's a lot of people's story. You know what I mean?
It is. It is.
And that's why, like I always say that I couldn't wait to get to Walpole to get stripes.
I mean,
that was crazy thinking like that, right?
It is crazy.
But
you know what I'm saying? Because you need that to survive.
Yeah, you need
You know what I'm saying? But the sad part is also that I believe a lot of our viewers don't even really understand. A lot of the people incarcerated have been through the foster care system.
Most definitely.
And they've received a lot of trauma on that. Through restorative justice circles that I was in personally, and me being as open with my life experience in the foster care system, a lot of men, they say in the circles, you know, Joseph, I was afraid to share my experience, but because you shared yours, I'm gonna share mine. And they talk about their relatives being raped with them in the house and them unable to do anything because they were a little child. But they felt guilty because they were unable to protect their brother or their sister. Because they were a child, we let them know, like, yo, that's not your responsibility. You know what I'm saying? As a child, you're a kid, you can't do nothing. You know what I mean? But the state doesn't do anything to actually try to, you know, help prepare that child and what their responsibility is as a child, which is really nothing but being a kid. You know what I'm saying? They don't provide that proper protection for them. You know, so while
things
being...
we see
things we see, we experience, right? You know, I have 4 other siblings that also went through the foster care system like myself, and they have their set of circumstances that they pushed them through certain trials, you know, and they still deal with it today differently than myself. You know, I was the only one that went and got incarcerated for violent acts, you know, lashing out. But everybody sees things differently. Everybody goes through their experiences and reacts differently, you know?
Let me ask you a question, Joe. Can you explain to your viewers, what is restorative justice? It seems like that had a big impact on you. Can you explain a little bit about that? And then we can talk about other things.
So restorative justice, it's a unique program in the sense that, you know, in light of all the other DOC programming, restorative justice was one of the most impactful programs that actually allowed the space for individuals to share their childhood trauma, right? And what anchors them into that in the penitentiary. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people might think like, oh, men in prison are not gonna share their life experiences with each other. But the reality is, we're all hurting people, right? And we're all looking for a safe space for ourselves to share that. You know what I'm saying? And you know, you've done 28 years in prison, and you've been in spaces with lifers that are willing to share certain things with you. Right? And it just creates that bond because we're going through a struggle. And as we continue to go through these struggles, we find a space, and that space just so happens to be restorative justice. Now, restorative justice, before it addresses, you know, your underlying crime as to why individuals incarcerated, it first starts to address the situations that led you to believe your lifestyle was okay. You know what I'm saying? And we explore those things, you know, we talk about, you know, domestic violence if that was the case, or community violence. And if neither one of those were the cases, then we explore other avenues, but it's a space where you get to share your own story and tell your story the way you saw it. Nobody else can dictate that for you, right? So it's a place where, you know, you're amongst men that we're all listening. And some of the men in that space, you've probably already shared your story with. So as you're sharing your story amongst other men that may not have heard the complete details of that, your friends will keep you accountable. You know, like, hey, share more. Open up more. Come on, dig it out. And then some men actually cry. And we let them do what they gotta do. For however long it is, they need to shed those tears. You know, so it's about learning, you know, opening up and talking about that trauma, talking about, you know, you might write a letter that you either send or don't to a person that may have caused you harm in your life. And then you'll write a letter to another person, whether you share that with them or you don't, that you have caused harm in your life, as a way of finding that self-forgiveness, because that's very important for your healing process. And that's something that we learn in restorative justice is, how can we have you heal through this process now so that you can see, you know, your victimization and understand how you've also victimized others.
That was the next question. So do you talk to, is it a piece of it about getting in touch with the victims or having them, the families of victims? Or?
You know, the thing is that the DOC and the judicial system, frowns on the idea of any person that had committed such a violent act as murder, to have any type of communication with the family members that they have harmed, right? But there are a lot of other groups that actually participate in restorative justice, within the state of Massachusetts. They go inside the prison and they share their story about the loss of their child or the loss of a loved one, in whatever capacity that might look like, right? There was one thing that I grappled with prior to restorative justice was, how do you apologize to a family that you've taken something that meant so much to them? And I always grappled with that for years. And then you had this one woman from Legacy Lives On. She came in and she shared her story about losing her son. And, one thing she said was, all she wanted the individuals in court that were convicted for the murder of her child was to just look at her and say sorry. And I was like, what?
That's it.
Sorry? Like, that's all you, like, for me, that was just too hard to grasp, the idea of just those words being that impactful, right? Because I was like, how can you actually apologize or show that you're truly apologetic to somebody that you've taken so much from? And when she said that, it just really settled in with me, and it allowed me to really move forward with the type of work that I wanted to do on myself, to continue with that, and also how can I impact others that may have already done what I've done, which is taking the life of a person, and if not them, then also impact those that are walking down that same path that I was on. Try to have them see something different. Like, nah, you don't need to do that. I looked at this woman, didn't look like my mother, but I understood the energy of motherhood. And she said that, and that's when I just understood that my whole life was to say I'm sorry, but live it in my actions.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
You know what I mean?
I got you, yeah. Let me ask you another question. What is CELWAP? Can we describe to the viewers what is CELWAP, what's your position in CELWAP, and why you think that's important?
So CELWAP is the Campaign to End Life Without Parole. My position is community organizer. So a lot of the work that I do is just outreach. I reach out to organizations, churches, schools, nonprofit organizations that have an interest in social injustices, just to create a platform of storytelling and education. Share the information, that's out there. The reason why, again, I do this is just because of my personal experience and the guys that we know that are still behind that wall. There is
a lot of good guys out there. I used to walk around the quad in Norfolk, and I used to see these guys, and I'm like, why is he still in prison? Right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people. Can you give me another reason why? Why do you think that, for the viewers that might be thinking like, opposed to this idea, what would you say to them? I mean, they don't have an inside view. They're just dealing with, a lot of people dealing with their pain or the false narratives from the media that transforms people to prisoners instead of human beings. What would you say to them?
Well, there's different reasons why somebody's incarcerated first, right? I mean, just on a basic level, not everybody in prison is truly a criminal. Sometimes we make mistakes, and some of those mistakes break a law. That doesn't make you a criminal, nor does it mean that you need rehabilitation prior to incarceration, right? A person is out late, is tired, maybe not even drinking alcohol, but just have been waking up every morning, early in the morning, just to go to work, and now it's Friday and they wanted to stay out a little bit late, but their body's worn out. They go back home and it's like 2 a.m, they fall asleep at the wheel, they crash, they might kill somebody. That is a crime, but it was based off of a mistake. You know what I'm saying? For the person that killed somebody, vehicular homicide, it's, I didn't mean to do it, I just fell asleep. We all fall asleep. You might be a passenger, you crash, right? You go to sleep, And so we have to understand that sometimes not everything is a true criminal act, and not everything is really, even if it's criminal, is done with true intent. Some things are based off of circumstances. We have, children that lash out towards foster parents, right? Or children that lash out because of pain. We have women that are incarcerated, because they were mistreated by their husband, and or their children were as well, and they lashed out and to protect. You know what I'm saying? Do they deserve to be in prison for life? You know, and I think the way we view instantly crime, it's based off of media. But when we actually get into the story of why a person did what they did, then we realize, wow, this is just more than the sensation of what media could capture. You know, we think about Centoria Brown, right? That was from the South, you know, young lady, grew up the way she grew up, and, you know, she killed a person. Did she deserve life in prison? We already know she did not, because she's free, you know, but little stories like that is very important to really hone in on, you know, when it comes to, does a person deserve to be in prison for the rest of their life? You know, Massachusetts abolished the death penalty, but we have life without parole. That's essentially serving a death penalty.
It is a death penalty, yeah.
You know, it's a slow death penalty. You know, as you said, you walk the quad in Norfolk with a lot of lifers wondering why they're still there.
They're still here, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And some of them are still there to this day, because I just left Norfolk a few months ago. And it broke my heart why they were still there. You know, because those are some of the humblest people, you know what I mean, on earth, you know? And I think it's just because they've gotten to appreciate what life is truly like in absence of their freedoms and all the things that they've taken from it. You know, so when it comes to my job as a community organizer, is really just educating people as to what that looks like. You know, and then also educating them on the process of what parole is. You know, because I think a lot of people automatically assume that if a person is sentenced to a duration in prison with eligibility of parole, that once that parole date comes, that they're gonna come home.
That's not true, yeah.
And that's not true. You know, and honestly, the trial that you have to go through on parole is quite horrendous. You know, you're being challenged about every decision you possibly may have made prior to incarceration, because you have to share your life story, right, with the parole board. But then also every decision you made while incarcerated. If you picked up a disciplinary ticket, you know what I'm saying? And they're gonna wanna know why. And if the disciplinary ticket was dropped, they still wanna know why. And then they're gonna think that you might have manipulated the situation for that disciplinary ticket to be dropped. You know, so there's a lot of things that a person has to go through just to get paroled. And again, I saw parole, I was eligible for parole after 15 years. I saw them one time, they gave me a setback. They didn't think I was ready enough. Their reasoning, as I understand it, was because they just wanted to see how I dealt with rejection. I did everything that I was supposed to do. I already did restorative justice. I did some college. I done a slew of programs. I had more program certificates of completion than I had disciplinary tickets, but yet they still gave me a setback. So I did the work. I did PTSD group class counseling, right? So I did the work, but they just wanted to see if I could deal with rejection and gave me 4 more years to do, which we know 4 more years is a sentence. You know, it's a prison sentence. And a lot can happen in 4 years.
Yeah. Let me ask you another question. We were just talking about the brothers, right? And I agree. You know, I know a lot of brothers that, you know, one brother in particular is 40 plus years, and I wish he was out here. You know what I mean? You know, providing information and direction to the kids. Let me ask you something. There's men 60 to 70 years old. Are they any longer a risk? And why are they not a risk? I'm saying, how are we using money? What is that? How are we wasting that money? And where can it be used? You know what I mean? If you was to, you know, it's ridiculous. When you really look at it, I don't think the public really understands what's really going on. Can you kind of like give them a little bit more insight about these old men and women that are walking around these penitentiaries?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of the old men and old women inside the penitentiaries are no different than a lot of the old men and old women out here in the community. You know, they will pick on you, but they mean you no harm. They're gonna just give it straight to you, cut raw, but then at the same time apologize if they might have offended you. You know, a lot of the older guys in there, man, I just find it absolutely humorous. You know, it's something to admire in the sense that they've grown up in prison, you know, and was able to find the fortitude to do so. but more so it's just that they keep a humor about themselves, and it's just because they don't want to really subject themselves to the reality that they may die in prison. And as it stands right now in the state of Massachusetts, they're destined to die in prison by law, and that's unfortunate because they do deserve a good chance out here. They have 40, 30 years in prison.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have gone without a disciplinary ticket 20 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they've been in the same institution for 20 years without getting into no trouble. They watch officers start off their job, their career, and then they retire, and maybe now their son works there or their cousin or something works there. So it's really, it's unfortunate that they have to go through that, but honestly, they're really no different than a lot of the older folks.
But let me ask you, do they pose a risk to the society at this time?
They do not.
And just some of my research I did, it said that it costs double to house them.
It does, and that's because of the medical costs.
Okay.
Right, so, it's obvious because, the older you get, the more frailer you are, right? And just like everybody in society, a lot of people just don't want to work out, even while incarcerated. So it certainly costs more because medical costs is up. The conditions in prison are not the best conditions as well. They're very deplorable. So if you're living in a deplorable state, your life expectancy is not going to be that great. So the water, the types of processed foods that we consume while there, the bedding, you're sleeping on a hard slab of metal, for 20, 30, 40 years. That's going to do some damage to your body.
Most definitely.
So there's a lot of deplorable conditions. Having to deal with so many personalities and having to navigate that raises your anxiety really high. And the higher your anxiety is, obviously you get stressed out, and it starts to wear and tear on your body. Yeah. So it's a deplorable condition for a lot of older folks.
If they were to change that and make it 25 years, what kind of alternatives would they have for men that are getting out? So if a man was getting out, if the public said, okay, let's let this guy out, let's do this life without parole, let's get rid of it. What alternatives and what they have in place? What are you guys planning to have in place?
So right now, as it stands, there was a bill that was
That's the H 1797.
Yeah, by Liz Miranda, right? And this is a great bill. So in that bill, I applaud the fact that restorative justice is a part of that,
I've seen
that writing, right? Because I know what that program has done for myself. And there's a lot of good brothers that have come out of prison that actually started that type of programming out here in the community, right? And I applaud those brothers for doing that because it's really actually reaching out to a broader community that was completely unaware as to what is restorative justice and how can it actually affect true change. So that component as being part of that bill, it's effective, right? Men go into prison, men and women go into prison, they're mandated by law to complete that program, right? Once most men that have gotten into that program, they stay in the program, even when they've graduated.
Come back.
They stay doing the program. They try to figure out ways in which they become leaders of that program for future programmers, right? So that's how impactful that program is. So I know that if an individual was sentenced to life in prison with the eligibility of parole after 25, it doesn't guarantee that they will get paroled after 25. But at least with restorative justice, as statistics show, it minimizes recidivism up to 2 to 3%. So that means, what I mean to say by that is 97 to 98% of the individuals that go to prison, come back out without doing restorative justice are likely to reoffend. If they do restorative justice, they're 1 to 2 or 3% less likely to reoffend. So that's how impactful restorative justice is.
Okay. Another question. There's mass incarceration.
Yeah.
How does the life without parole affect mass incarceration?
Well, in Massachusetts, right, we have about 6,000 individuals, roughly 6,000, incarcerated in state prison. About 1,000 are serving life without parole. Parole. About 1,000 are serving life without parole. Now, Massachusetts is one of the smallest states outside of Rhode Island in comparison to the rest of the nation. And the other state that can follow Massachusetts with that many lifers is Louisiana. So Massachusetts is first, Louisiana follows right after. And as we know, Louisiana has a higher incarceration rate than Massachusetts does. In fact, crime has actually been going down in Massachusetts, but district attorneys and judges still find it necessary to give lengthy sentences and give life sentences to just about everybody that gets convicted of murder conviction. But let's look at what that really looks like, right? Because most of the people that are being targeted with life sentences come from Black and brown communities. So a lot of these Black and brown communities are being targeted with just complete life sentences. That's 1,000 individuals serving life without parole, but there are another 1,000 to 2,000 that are serving life with the eligibility of parole. So out of 6,000 individuals, there's at least half the population serving a life sentence in prison.
Damn. Oh, that's crazy. Do you have anything more that you want to say today? If you could talk to that's the camera right there, to the public. And I'm not saying just those that are opposed, but what can people do? And what kind of thoughts would you have people think? Or where can they search for more information to kind of look into this life without parole bill?
Yeah, so there's a lot going on. We have our website, www.cellwap.org. You could just go on there, see all the information is there, and just start doing your own research with that. We also have social media platforms. We have Instagram, we have Facebook, and Twitter as well, where you could just follow up and reach out. You could reach out to myself through our website page, and I'll go and speak at any event or any setting that you have in mind. We could just coordinate what that might look like and set a time and date. I'll be happy to do that myself, or any other person that sits on the campaign would be happy to come out and speak to anybody and provide the right information that anybody needs regarding ending life without parole in Massachusetts. We know that it's a hard fight, even though Massachusetts touts itself as a liberal state. Despite the fact of its liberalism, it's very conservative, and it's one of the oldest founding states in this country. So it's like trying to teach an old dog new tricks. Sometimes this state is just stuck in its ways, and I think it's important for us to really think about what it means for ourselves. Despite your denomination, just what does it mean for yourself? To find a moment to forgive, to believe that a person is redeemable and a person can mature. Not so much has changed, because a person's life experiences is their life experience, but what does it mean for them to mature from that life experience? Because we all make mistakes, we all make bad decisions, but how many of us actually learn from them? And from my own experiences, a lot of the men in prison and the women have learned from their own bad decisions and or mistakes, and they want to contribute that back to society.
Okay, thank you. Yes, like I was saying, that the gentleman that I seen in Norfolk, he's been there since I was a kid.
Yeah.
I've been going back and forth, and when I would go back in, he would look at me like, dude, I don't even get a chance. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it really made me feel. But he's one of the most powerful brothers that I've met. You know what I mean? Probably in life. You know what I mean? As far as interacting with me and giving me some information. And he's been in 46 years.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people there, like I said, that I say, why are they still here? There's people that contradict public safety. They're not a threat. Why are they still there? Why are we still investing money into people that are not a threat, double the money, and then we have these young kids that get no money. We have nothing on the prevention level.
No, certainly. So there's more that I want to say about that too, right? So when we come even to think about it, right, it was from 2005 up until 2015, there was waves of individuals being released from prison because of wrongful convictions.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
The brother Sean Ellis,
Yep.
He was one of them, trial 4, but that was just one person.
Yeah.
There's so many others that came out before him and after him that were wrongfully convicted in the state of Massachusetts for murder,
Yeah.
right? If we didn't have LWOP, if we didn't have life without parole in Massachusetts, a lot of these individuals that were wrongfully convicted would not be faced with, I'm gonna die in prison and I'm innocent.
Yeah.
You know
Well,
what I'm
there's
saying?
be a lot that are still alive. Maybe there's a lot that died innocent.
Exactly,
You know
right?
what I mean?
And that's an unfortunate
crazy.
aspect about what life without parole means in the state of Massachusetts. There are so many men and women that are just there. Now, for the women part of it, a lot of women are, now, the incarceration rate for women in Massachusetts is not that high, right? However, legislator was DOC, the union, the corrections union, that was really pushing hard for opening up another women's prison. Gratefully, there was a moratorium. It passed. We're here. We don't have another prison being built in Massachusetts for at least another 5 more years. Again, crime has gone down since 2000. In 2000, there was at least 9,000 to 10,000 people incarcerated in the state prison in Massachusetts. Now it's at 6,000.
Wow.
That speaks greatly about what crime looks like in the state of Massachusetts. But now we have a higher incarceration rate of individuals serving life in prison, and a lot of them are also innocent. In the city of Boston, 70% of all wrongful convictions have to do with law enforcement. 70% of all wrongful convictions. That says a lot about where we are, right? And it also says a lot about what does that due process look like, right? You have a district attorney that's trained in college that they're just there to go for the wind. They're not there to truly reflect justice. And you can ask any DA this,
I get it. I
right?
understand,
And any of the people that are watching this show, I think they need to sit back, and if they have a friend that's a district attorney, ask your friend, are you there to seek justice, or are you there just to prosecute on the behalf of the Commonwealth? As to what that Commonwealth looks like, it really doesn't matter for the district attorney. It just means that they have all the resources of the Commonwealth to get that conviction because you was charged with the crime, right? So when we look at that, we're saying, wow, there's really no avenue for justice. Most judges that sit on the judge's seat were prior DAs. So they have a district attorney point of view as well. So the system is stacked against individuals that go before it. And the ones that really are targeted before the system are Black and brown people and indigenous men and women, right? So now we look at the state of Massachusetts, Black, brown, and indigenous people make up about 28% of the population, but yet it's about 59% of us that are incarcerated.
Wow, yeah.
That speaks volumes in a liberal state like Massachusetts. So I always think about those things, and I think about, what else can we do to actually change this paradigm that we're in? What can our state taxpayers do? When it comes to incarcerating an individual and holding them, it's roughly about $60,000 a year to house one person in prison. $60,000 a year is a college tuition for 1 year, right? That's a lot of money being put into little old me to be in there. Now, I did 20 years. Now, that's 60 times 20. I'm not a mathematician, but the numbers say it's a big number, right? So now we think about men that are aging in prison, men and women aging in prison. Now, you have the 60, but then now you have to add the added cost of healthcare, right? That starts to add up to at least 100, 110, 120,000 a year just to house one person that's aging in the system. That's all taxpayer dollars. But now let's also look at what the numbers look like when it comes to housing this person. Not all of that money goes to actual medical care. Not all that money goes to actual mental health care. There's no psychology in state prison. So not a person in prison is gonna actually receive the proper counseling that they need to actually get over. We're the men that actually create the proper counseling, restorative justice, and any other program like that. We create this space for a person to find healing. The DOC does not do that. They only provide mental health, and the mental health is only there if there is a crisis. If you plan on hurting yourself, hurting somebody else, or whatever the case is, right? Or if you're hearing voices. But they're just there to listen to you, and if you're a problem, lock you in a secure cell and monitor you
Bridgewater.
and send you to Bridgewater so you can get some medication and not feel that way, right? So it's
That's
not
another form of getting money out.
that's another form of getting money, right? But that's a small percentage of what's actually happening. And it's about 1.3% of taxpayer dollars that actually go into the rehabilitative process for those that
That
have been
low?
caught. That low. It's 1.3% or 1.7% of taxpayer dollars that goes into rehabilitation. That means that all the programming that a person might be able to go to DOC website and look up and say, what are the programmings that an individual is getting while incarcerated? A lot of those programs exist, but they only exist in the sense that they're on the website. They don't exist in practice. You know what I'm saying? So when you go in there, you're saying, oh, okay, there's this program that I'm eligible for, I could do that. And then when you get there, they say, no, we don't have that program. We don't have the staff to come in. Most of the staff that do go in to do these programs are all volunteers. None are rare. You rarely find any that are paid staff to run these programs.
That's true.
So that's why a lot of these programs just do not exist, although they're on the website. You know, we have welding programs in there. We have the upholstery program in there. You know, we have a whole slew of programs that are trades for individuals from when they get out, but they took away that trade, that apprenticeship from the DOC to ensure that when a person comes out, they have an adequate ability to actually integrate back into society with good employment, something that they gained in prison, but they took away the apprenticeship and just made a certificate so that when you get out, it became harder. So a lot of people don't want to do that programming either because the DOC worked against what that might look like for you upon your release. So again, it's 1.3 or 1.7% that goes into rehabilitation, right? That means that the DOC does not care about the individuals that they house in prison and how hopeless they might feel around other people that are serving life in prison that have no opportunity of getting out and feeling a kind of way of a man like how you went in and out, in and out, in and out, and they get angry with that, right? So that hopelessness, they put that on you. And when you enter back into this community, you're bringing that sickness of hopelessness with you. You know what I'm saying? And then you infect the community with that. And then the community doesn't want to see no more people that are incarcerated come back out, right?
Definitely.
And this makes that situation. So this is another reason why it's important to end life without parole, because of that hopelessness that exists there. And if anybody been into a hospital that's really, really sick, you feel once you leave that hospital, you need to take a shower.
Check it, most definitely.
For people that do a lot of prison time, you can't just take a shower to get that hopelessness off you. You know what I'm saying? That kind of stays with you in so many different ways, and it's post-carceral trauma. You know what I'm saying? And that's a whole aspect to investigate and discuss and do real programming even in the community for, right? Because, you know, every person that comes home after doing 20 or more years, we have to go and see a transitional counselor as part of that process because they understand that you went through a traumatic experience, which is incarceration, and that you need continued help because we don't believe you truly rehabilitated in prison, right? Because 1.3 or 1.7% of taxpayer dollars goes into rehabilitation. But now let's talk about where the large lump sum of that money goes into. A large lump sum of that money, which is about 70%, goes into security. That security goes into the correction officers' unions' coffers. So the correction officers' unions always go into negotiations with the DOC, whatever amount of years, right? In every amount of years, they ask for more money and they get it. Massachusetts has the third highest correctional officers' union in the country. They're the third highest paid officers in the country. And crime has gone down in Massachusetts. The prison population has gone in Massachusetts, has gone down, but yet our correctional officers' unions' pay continues to increase. They also get inflation increasements every negotiation, whereas the rest of the country or the rest of the state doesn't get that inflation increase. The DOC's union does. You know, so what does that even mean? You know what I mean? And why so much goes into their pockets when crime is not so high, violence in prison isn't high. Now, some people might say Shirley Max has a lot of violence, Susan Baranowski, but it was one of the things that I even challenged a lot of the
I
administrators.
don't think so. I think around I think it's just shows
Media.
more. I was there. Yeah, it's the media. It's not really just crazy.
But it's also the administration. High anxiety increases when you don't socialize with other people. We just went through an episode called the coronavirus, right? COVID-19, the pandemic. A lot of families out here in the world had lost, their ability to have a good relationship with their loved one, have a good relationship with their children, with their parents, with their significant other, just through the pandemic. But you're free. You just housed in your house. You're securing yourself in your own house. That was tough for them, right? But for a person like me coming home during the pandemic, after all those years incarcerated, the pandemic for me was like, wow, this is easy. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's not a lot of people out here. I don't have to worry about all the anxiety of being in a crowded room that I'm not used to, where people are bumping me. I didn't have to worry about that. So for me, my transition was a lot easier. But what I realized is that a lot of people in society being isolated from each one created a lot of stresses. You know what I'm saying? And so when you look at Shirley Max, where it's lockdown, everybody's segregated, it's gonna create stress. People are gonna have high anxiety. You don't know what the next man is thinking when you come out of your cell now, because you might have had a slight argument or a debate with him about cards, you know what I'm saying? Or about a simple transaction of, hey, can I get some cookies this week? And I'll just get you that next week in commissary, right?
Something happens.
And then something happens, the prisoner's on lockdown, the administration ships dudes around to different units, and then months down the line, you see the guy, and you're unsure now of this guy's gonna stress you out about some cookies or something like that. And so now you have high anxiety because you haven't seen him in a while. But that's all on the DOC. They create that atmosphere. The culture of the prison system is not entirely in part on the individuals that are incarcerated. It's more entirely in part by those that work there. They're the ones that create the system, right? They're the ones that create the culture. We talk about, since George Floyd occurred, about, how there's a culture of, the blue wall that exists within the police force, right? And the police force has a particular culture, well, the DOC does too. They have an attitude that you're doing time. You committed a crime, so therefore you belong here. And you don't deserve no treatment. But the reality is, most of those correctional officers that work there, and you know how this is, right? You've been in there, when you have like 5, 10 years and a correctional officer sees you for that long, they start to develop a relationship with you, and they open up. And in the process of them opening up, a lot of them admit that they themselves would be in prison.
If it wasn't, they just didn't get caught.
They didn't get caught.
They say,
So you have correctional officers that are also criminals that just never got caught.
Most definitely.
You know what I'm saying? But they're part of now a DOC culture that allows them to continue to be a criminal inside a safe place for them to live, where they can actually, let out some, some anger or some attitude that they might have had at home that they then can take out in the workplace. You know what I'm saying? So it's about 70% that goes into security, and what it means by security is staff employment. And it's
the crazy chunk, man. That's mostly all of it.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. A lot of correctional officers, while I was in prison, were loving the pandemic in the sense that a lot
overtime, double time, triple time.
Some of them bought houses during the pandemic, simply because they was making an annual salary of now about $120,000 a year for a correctional officer. They're not even a doctor. They don't even need. They don't even need a degree to be a correctional officer. You just need a GED or a high school diploma, and they're making about 110 or 120 grand. Now, mind you, I'm all for unions, but I think we need to really look at how this money is actually being displayed across the board when it comes to what do we need for our communities, for individuals when they come home, right? Individuals are incarcerated, they're going through a traumatic experience. That's not even considering what their life was like prior to incarceration. Just incarceration alone, the dehumanizing effect of once you get in, you're stripped of all your clothing. You're giving a new identification, which is a number. But not only that, you're also dehumanized, devalued, because you have to expose private parts of your body to another person. More so, a man, right? And as men, that's uncomfortable, right? But it gets to a point where that becomes comfortable, and that's not normal.
It's not,
you know what I'm saying? And that becomes traumatic, so we come home with that. We come home and we bring that to our communities, and our communities are affected by that. You know what I'm saying? But when it comes also to that hopelessness, let's also talk about how that hopelessness also affects the correctional officers. Because the correctional officers, young as they are, 21, they're in prison. Wow, that man is serving a life in prison. That man's also serving life in prison. He doesn't care. I remember when I first got into the system, I'm only serving life with the eligibility of parole.
It's funny how you said only.
Only serving life with the eligibility of parole. And what I mean to say by that was I had a I don't care attitude with that sentence, right? So a person with just life, I can imagine that for them it's, I really don't care. You know what I'm saying?
No, it's true.
For me it was, listen, officer, you're working this unit. I don't mind if you shake my cell down, but if you mess up my cell, you're gonna have a problem with me. Oh, I'm a correctional officer, you're supposed to talk to me like that. I don't care. I'm doing life. This is my house. At the end of the day, you going home, but you can make it home tonight. Just don't mess with my cell. You know, so that's that hopelessness now that this officer is also taken home to his family. Like, wow, I literally made it out of prison today because a guy, he threatened me, but in a polite way. You know what I'm saying? And you shouldn't have to go to work to have to deal with that. But when you have individuals that look at, well, I'm serving life in prison and I have no hope. You know, hope came for me later on when I realized people started to get paroled. Right? Oh, I have a chance. I have a chance to get back home, to be with my family now, when I never had that. Now I have a chance because parole is actually paroling people that look like me. You know what I'm saying? Because before they wasn't doing that. And even still to this day, parole is dealing with a lot of backlash on that, right? And I mean, people could read the articles, right? But now people can actually be paroled that look like me. I have an opportunity to get there. I'm gonna do my work. I started doing my work more so because I didn't want to be like a lot of the men that I knew that was just serving life in prison, no eligibility of parole. They were losing their mothers, their fathers, their relatives, and they're still outliving them in prison, and all those members of their family are dying. I didn't want to be like that. So that was one of the reasons why I decided to change. One of the reasons why I was like, you know what? I affected a family. How many more families do I have to affect? You know what I'm saying? And how much of a change can I actually produce with myself, with the environment that I'm in, and then hopefully get paroled and then actually do this good work out in the community as well, you know, and change lives, you know, and reach people. I think that was very important. You know, so when I think about hopelessness in prison, I don't think about what hopelessness is for those that are incarcerated. I think about those that also have to work there, bring that to their family, bring that to their community. But also those that are not serving that type of sentence and do come back out into the community and bring that hopelessness back home. You know what I'm saying? Because for them, they experience some trauma, you know, especially if they seen somebody get murdered in prison. That's trauma. You shouldn't have to see that, especially if you've never seen it before, but yet now you're in prison in a secured environment, and it's now being displayed that you are not protected by those that are sworn to protect you. You know what I'm saying? So you're bringing that back home, and that shouldn't be the case. So if we end life without parole, I think literally we are doing a cultural shift. While being in Norfolk right now for 9 months, right? Because about, November last year, I was, you know, going home from work, you know, to my fiance's house, and we was gonna have pizza and watch Netflix. Going to go get gas. 2 guys were angry for whatever reasons. And
go ahead,
you know what I'm saying?
I didn't want to talk about that. Let's go.
All right, so, you know, I'm driving, and I see this guy, he's, in his car, he's in the passenger seat, and I'm just looking ahead, but off peripheral, I'm seeing him moving his hands, and he's looking at me, so I pay him attention. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with this man, right? And he's waving his hands in the air, and, I'm like, what's going on? You know what I'm saying? And he goes to open up his door, so I'm like, oh, all right, this just got a little bit more, and then he gets out of his car and he comes towards me. And as he comes towards the car, we're in traffic now, mind you, we're on Boston Street.
Boston downtown, yeah.
Boston Street, you know what I mean? I put my car in park. I don't need no incident occurring. He comes up to my door, so in my mind, I'm doing all this community work, campaign to end life without parole. I work at Inner City Weightlifting, which is a nonprofit organization geared towards mentoring a lot of young men and women in the communities to look at fitness as an alternative lifestyle to the street life, right? Or being caught up in that lifestyle. And or if you've been incarcerated, to look at fitness as an alternative career. Because it's hard to get a job once you've been convicted of a felony, right? So this is an opportunity for individuals to get employment as a personal trainer or find a different path.
That you teach?
That I work with.
You work with us.
So right now I'm the manager for the new location in Savin Hill, and also a personal trainer, but also a mentor to the young student trainers that come in, to share my life story with them. If they've not been incarcerated, encourage them.
You're doing that now,
I'm doing that now.
Okay,
right?
Yeah.
I was doing that then as well.
Okay.
Right,
At
last
the
year.
time of this
At the
event?
time of this incident. So I just left work. I left the gym. I was working in Kendall Square at that time. And so I left the gym looking for a gas station. I'm on Boston Street. These two men, one guy jumps out his car. He comes to me. He's yelling. His hands are in the air. And I'm like, all right, let me just listen to this man and let him say what he has to say, but not match his energy, because we learn through conflict resolution. If you match that energy, you're just gonna escalate it, right? I just figured, let this man just yell his piece.
He's just at the door.
Yeah, he was doing his thing, right? So I'm just standing right there at the door. I'm half in my car and like half listening to him, and then his driver gets out the car. And as he's getting out the car, I see his hands above the hood of his car, and he's yelling, and I'm like, oh, this just got, in my mind, I'm thinking like, yo, this is getting carried away, right? And
he's not matching, you're not matching it, but he definitely is, right?
He's matching his energy now, and they're both together. So, I look at him, and I say, you guys are about to jump me, huh? Now, mind you, there's traffic in front, there's traffic behind. They corner me in. One punches me, I respond. I start punching back. Then in my mind, as I'm fighting them, half-heartedly, because it's like, the last time I got into a fight was 2004. You know what I'm saying? Now it's 2021, and that's a long time in fighting, and my heart's not in this.
I was going to say that process of the restoration, it should have took some of it out of it.
And my heart's not in this, right? And then I'm doing a lot of this community work. Just earlier that day, I got a phone call from a friend saying that she would like for me to go out to Brockton with her because Brockton High School had just gave her some money to open up a home for a lot of these kids that are being suspended month on end. And I was like, well, listen, just send me the itinerary, what the pay is gonna look like so I could work that in my schedule and go out there and help with that mentoring, right? Because I know that's important. I have my nieces out there, and I know that, if some of these kids are being suspended, some of those kids are my niece's friends possibly, and they're just gonna end up incarcerated. My nieces don't need to have friends locked up. It's bad enough they had their uncle locked up, but they don't need to experience that with friendships, right? So that was my thought process. So I was like, yes, certainly, I wanna help with that, and plus, this is a community that looks like me, so I want to help with that. But so it was, that work that I was doing, the reentry work that I was doing with Tufts University, My Turn program, which is Tufts Education Reentry Network. So I'm just helping men and women that have recently got out of prison as well, to help them navigate what reentry looks like and what are the needs.
It's involved in everything.
So I'm
Yeah.
involved, right? So in my mind, these guys are fighting with me, and I'm trying to defend myself, and I'm saying, I don't belong here. Like, I'm doing so much good work in this community, and I have so many people depending on me for the first time in my life where they depended on me and it mattered, right? Because I had people depend on me when I was a gang leader, but that didn't matter because I could get locked up and still be a gang leader.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It didn't matter. But
Your
now here it
credibility
is.
is tough.
It's a lot different
It's a lot,
when we take on real responsibility in life. And here it is. I have good responsibilities. I have people that look up to me, people that admire me, people that are depending on me. And seeing the type of change that I've gone through that are applauding me. And now this situation is occurring, and I'm saying, how can I get myself out of this?
Yeah.
Not only that, I'm also on parole. I'm not supposed to be going through this, right? So I try to push these guys away, but they don't relent. They keep attacking me. They keep trying to pull me out of the car, and it's a matter of, do I just sit here and let them hit me and let them get it off their chest, or do I continue to defend myself to the point that one of them has to be hurt? Because I can't be hurt, right? Because I know what it feels like. I know what it looks like when somebody is truly a victim, because I've victimized people before, right? So for me, it was, I know if I don't do anything, I would probably be laid out in the middle of the street in this traffic. And probably people would drive around me because that's more than likely to happen. So I decided to defend myself some more, and they didn't stop. I started to search the car. I found a small switchblade. I presented it to them. Now, when I went to go grab it, I think one of them noticed that I was reaching for something. And I grabbed it, I stepped out the car, and I presented it with my hand down.
Just show them.
Showing them, right? They
that's
backed
enough,
up, right? As they backed up, I said, okay, everything's already understood. You know, you got your punches off. Hopefully you're content with that. The fight is over because now you see a weapon. This was my thought process. They see a weapon, it's over. You know, I could get in my car and drive off. Traffic ahead of me has already left, right? The cars are gone. Now it's just traffic behind us. And all the while these guys are hitting me, you hear men and women yelling out the car, leave him alone, leave him alone. They're honking their horn, and these guys are not stopping. So I go, get back in the car, go to close my door, they catch my door again and tried to pull me out the car, punching me. Even with the knife in my hand, they just did not care. You know, so I'm like, what am I gonna do? I have a knife in my hand, I'm about to drop it because I know the cost of using this. I've been there. I've been incarcerated for violence multiple times. So I'm like, I don't wanna use this knife, you know, but I don't want to continue to have to fist fight with two other men.
Or have them do something else.
And then something happens to me, you know what I'm saying? I don't want nothing to happen to me, you know, and I want to continue to live my life. So, you know, I make the decision to swing it openly at a large arc in hopes that they respond fast enough. And I thought they did, honestly, right? They jumped back. It gave me enough time to close my door. I locked my door, go to put it in park. I look at them, they're yelling, they're cursing, they're punching and kicking the car. There's dents on the car now. And, you know, I just go to drive off. And as I drive off, there's a red light, and I stop, and then another guy says, hey, you all right? You know, like, you're good? Like, that was... And I'm like, no, I'm good. I brush it off because I'm used to violence. I've been jumped before, right? So it's like, all right, nobody was hurt. It was punches, and that was it. I didn't think I actually hurt somebody with the knife until later on. And then actually until the next day, you know, when I decided to turn myself in to my parole officer when I called him, you know, but that night was just a different experience altogether because it was like I was living in a dream. Never had I ever before been in a situation where I thought of myself as a true victim. You know, in life, we go through so much violence, we consider that as part of...
It's normal.
Our stripes.
Stuff. Yeah.
That's part of the stripes. That's normal. This is what makes us tough. This is what allows us to survive in this society, right? And here it is that night. I'm like, wow, like I'm really a victim this time. But I was always a victim.
Yeah.
But this is the first moment in which I really connected with that, because this was a situation I didn't want to hurt nobody, nor did I want it to be hurt. Right? I didn't even know what the situation was all about.
Still don't know.
Still don't know, because they were yelling in their car about whatever it was, and for two individuals to be that angry, it means that they was dealing with something else that had nothing to do with
about
me.
you, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like, all right, I don't know what that was about. While I was incarcerated for that, because it was a violation of my parole for just being in an altercation. Even if I defended myself, that was still a violation of my parole. Now, those two individuals, the night that they reported it to the officers, they reported it on video and audio, the officer's video camera, that they're the ones that confronted me. But the media painted a picture that I was road rage incident, murderer that is on the street, stabbing and slashing people, that I was in a drunken rage. They had a whole big story of things to say about me, but yet there's evidence that contradicted all that, right? And the evidence came from those individuals that were supposed to be victims, stating they're the ones that confronted the situation. They're the ones that started the situation. I was only responding to defend myself.
So let me ask you something. The parole, so you had to go back.
Yeah.
The parole just automatically violated you?
It was an automatic violation. Automatic violation.
Is it because of contact with police, or is it just that?
It was because I was involved in an incident, and with that incident actually transpiring, it also came out.
They pressed charges?
No, they didn't. Okay. The detectives pressed charges. So it came out that I was also driving without a license, right? So it's reentry is a problem, right? Again, I was born in the 80s. My birth certificate situation is a crazy situation all in itself. The hardest part for a person on reentry is getting their identification straight. You need a state ID to cash a check. If you leave prison with all this money, how are you gonna cash that check? The DOC gives you a copy of your prison ID to cash your check. After that, that prison ID, that copy is not worth anything no more, right?
No, it's
not. You would think that because the DOC is a state agency, the RMV is a state agency, if you are a citizen, you should just get a state ID automatically when you're released. But they don't work together, right? It's all politics in the systems, and the system is rigged to make it difficult just for the average citizen, right? It makes it difficult. But then couple that with a felony, and you really have, a failing shot at reentry, So I was driving without a license that night because I needed to, I was doing college at the same time. I'm going for my degree. So I was doing online college, homework all day, pressed for time, decided to use my fiance's car to get to work and to get back home from work on time without losing too much time. It was a poor choice, bad decision.
They didn't warrant going back to jail, I don't think.
For the average citizen, driving without a license would not get them incarcerated.
For me, I get it. No, I understand.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You just get a fine maybe. You know what I'm saying? And you're on your way. Have somebody come pick up the car, and we'll wait right here until they do. But you can't drive it, right? So for the average citizen, that would be the cost. But for me, because I'm on parole, the stakes are a lot higher. And this is also what it would look like if we were to end life without parole, period, for just natural life sentences, right? Their parole situation, what it looks like for them to be a citizen is going to be a lot higher for them than the average citizen. The average citizen can afford to make mistakes within the law, but a person serving life on parole cannot make any mistakes because the first mistake would just put them behind the wall. Even if they took a sip of wine, a sip of beer, was around the area, there was too much contact with marijuana, and it showed up in their urine, they could go back behind the wall for a month until it gets clarified, until it gets cleared up, right? Massachusetts needs to do a lot more work with this because California has already changed a lot of those laws, where a person for minor infraction doesn't go back behind the wall, because just going back behind the wall can be a traumatic experience altogether, especially for a minor infraction that could be resolved while you're in the community. Now, Massachusetts does have laws that allow an individual upon a violation of parole to remain in the community, which means they maintain their housing because nobody else is going to pay their bills. They can maintain their car insurance because nobody else is going to pay that as well, right? And they can maintain doing other things until that revocation hearing for their parole is resolved, albeit while they're in the community. If you have a minor infraction and go instantly back behind the prison wall, and then it gets resolved 9 months later or 5 months later, you might have lost your apartment. And a person that's on parole or has a felony, we already know housing, it's hard to get.
Anyways, yeah.
Your credit scores, it's already low because you've done time, right? So nobody was building your credit. So reentry as a process is a very strenuous process for anybody coming home. You know what I'm saying? So and I'm not making excuses. I'm just explaining what the reality of what that situation looks like for anybody on any given day. So for my situation was, I made the excuse that it was okay to drive today to work so I could get back home early because I was pressed for time. It was a poor choice. And a choice that I have now makes is being home. Literally my fiance is, unfortunately, the person that drives me around all the time. Not that she minds about it, but she shouldn't have to. You know what I'm saying? Because she could work and she could do other things as than just driving me places, right? But that's just what it looks like. And so that was part of the reason why my parole was violated, was that I drove without a license. The case in the courts, although the charges were brought by the detectives, the grand jury decided not to prosecute because the charges were based on, some BS evidence, that the detectives gave to the district attorney regarding text messages that had nothing to do with me. It only had to do with the detective and my fiance. And, there was a whole bunch of other narratives that were created about who I was as a so-called ex-felon, right? Ex-felons we're cons, and we're trying to con everybody. So the notion was that my fiance didn't truly know my past, so it's...
She was conned too, huh?
But yeah, basically she was conned in believing that I was just good guy in the community doing all this good work with a secret past, of incarceration and criminal activity. The reality is she knows my story just like everybody else knows my story. If anybody knows me, they know I'm a person that I share my story because my story is educational and it's my life experiences and it means a lot to me, but it means a lot to me to share it because I want people to learn from some of the decision makers that I made in life and what can we do to actually impact some of our youth today. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's very necessary to share that way. But that night, when I got locked up and seen parole, they violated my parole, but reinstated parole again. Under the same conditions, more or less. Nothing really has changed. But I would say the experience of going back in has changed me in a tremendous way, in the sense that, it was just having to relive that trauma.
That must have been fearful.
It was crazy because
you're back on a life sentence again.
You're back in. And you're going into Walpole, and Walpole is a madhouse in the sense that you have everybody coming in from the counties that just got sentenced to life in prison. So you have fresh, young men that are now serving life in prison, and they have this hopelessness. They have so much anger, so many emotions, right? Some of them are looking on the bright side, some of them are not. Some guys are there and they're not serving life, but they came in on a new sentence because they reoffended and they're angry because they lost so much. They don't know how to deal with that. And again, there's no psychology in prison, just mental health. And all they do is say, okay, all right, and then they write in the book. You know what it's
Yeah,
like. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't do anything for nobody. You know.
Let me ask you. I'm gonna pose them to you, man. You know, hearing you speak and your message, man, you have to really be aware. The more powerful, or the more, how can I put it? The more the more powerful your message is, the ability to move masses, the more things are going to be asked. You have to, I'm not, you're a grown ass man, but excuse me, I'm just saying, you really have to take care of this message, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You really have to, because I see you, man. I see you doing big things. And I'm not, I'm being honest. I'm listening. I'm sitting here. I just been listening. You have to take care of it, because that's not going to be the only time. There's a lot of things going to keep coming at you, bro. You have I'm just saying, just really be careful, because you don't want to lose it. You know what I mean?
That's true.
And people need to hear that, man. You know what I mean?
And that's one of the things that cost me with going back in on this violation, which is, prior to that incident that occurred last year, I believe that in every space, in every interaction, that I'm gonna actually affect change with every person.
That's a fact. I'm listening to you. I'm just listening to you, right? I'm telling you.
But that change was gonna be positive.
Yeah.
This night, it showed me that my interactions, I need to be a little bit more cautious, more humble.
A lot more cautious.
You know what I'm saying? And step back and not have this notion that I can affect positive change in everybody, which is unfortunate, right? Because, in my mind, I believe that, we live in a world where people are genuinely kind, right? People are genuinely loving, right? And that's just on the base. I believe that, you know what I'm saying? But I know circumstances in life alter, that kindness, alter that lovingness. What does that look like for everybody? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I know what it looked like for me when I was younger growing up.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? What it looks like for me now, I want to still be a person to help people, but I know that not everybody needs help right now.
Yeah.
Right? Those that need help, I'm going to extend myself. And if they open up their door, I will enter. You know what I'm saying? But if some people already have a rudeness to them, an abrasiveness to them, I'm gonna find a way to just go somewhere else. Yeah. So I'm very cautious of who I deal with now and how I interact.
Yeah. You have to be safe, because what happens when you I see you, like I said, there's a lot of people that I listen to, you have ability to really affect change. And when you have something like that, you have to take extra precaution. You really have to, especially you have something in a balance that it can really take it away. And so what that does is it stops people from hearing. There's people that are sick. I'm hearing your message, and you affected something in me. You told my story in the beginning.
Yeah, no,
you know what I mean? Foster care, just all that stuff, and the power of your message. And I would just say that again and leave it at that. You have to protect that. I don't know what you have to do, but that has to. If that's what you like, you have to either live that all the way or don't live it at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People don't always have messages. Everybody has a message, but not to affect masses. You know what I mean?
No,
you have a message that affects masses, and you're gonna be tried on all angles.
It provided, that everybody keeps their hands to themselves.
Yeah.
I'll be happy, you know what I'm saying?
But even if to that point, right?
You know what I'm saying?
Because even to that point, you see some of the true leaders, all that, that I remember. And just to say that, when you said that, I remember when they was walking and they was throwing rocks at Martin Luther King, he just kept walking, and Jesse was the one that wanted to fight. Right? He like, dude, we're not gonna respond. You can't, because you have a message. There's gonna be things. There might be, to that point, knowing if that's what's gonna take you off, that might be what be sent to you next. I'm just saying, just be careful. So whatever you have to kill in you, you know what I mean? Whatever you have to kill in you to keep your message,
And I think that's one of the hardest parts, but it's one that, as
it's tough.
From that experience, I have learned so much more about myself, because I've always wondered prior to that if I had the ability to try to take myself out of a situation of violence, because I've never been presented with actual physical altercation where I didn't want to be there. This was the first moment in my life where I didn't want to be there. And I was trying to figure out better ways to get out of it. And part of it was my life training of fighting. You hit me, I'm gonna respond. That's second nature, right? And it's just a knee-jerk reaction. Should it be that way? No. right? But I think that everybody does have a right to defend themselves.
Yeah, you do.
Up to a
Self-preservation,
measure
yeah.
of respecting another person's life still, right? And I think that in this situation, I did everything that was right to defend myself without truly hurting another person, albeit an individual did get hurt. I didn't want that. I don't think it should have ever gotten to that. You know what I mean? But if, you know, I was cornered into a position of having to respond in the way that I didn't want to.
I'm not
You know what
judging
I mean?
that. Yeah, I'm not judging you on that, Joe.
I'm only clearing that
I'm
up,
not
being
judging you.
mindful
Yeah.
of how a lot of other people
Might think
think as they listen, right?
Yeah.
You know, because everybody has an opinion until they're caught in that situation.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? We do not know what we're gonna do until something happens to us, and then we respond, and then we're actually surprised by how we might respond, right? Or we respond the way we might think we do, you know, that we expected to do, right? But we just don't know until we're there.
No, you don't. I want to make clear that I wasn't judging you. I'm just looking from
certainly.
further. I'm like, you have something good. When you have something precious, you have to watch it.
Yeah.
There's gonna be things. You just, you know, there's things in, you know, in my life, you know, I have two kids, man. There's some things I won't do.
Yeah.
You know, I live by the motto, if it ain't worth killing a man for, it ain't worth fighting and arguing for.
Oh, no, certainly.
That's, you know what I mean? Meaning that's it. It's
certainly.
really got to be something really crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Other than that, because it'll destroy this, man.
Yeah.
It'll destroy everything I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And vice versa for you.
Nah,
you know
certainly.
What I mean?
And that's an important message all in itself, because, you know, we're the ones that are closer to the issue. You know what I mean? And we're actually sharing our experience, sharing our story to create change.
Yeah.
And we're those agents of change that is needed, right? A person could go to college, get a college degree, and study about these things and not merit any worth, you know, and have to work somewhere else.
It's iron sharpens iron.
You know what I mean?
You get what I mean?
Yeah, certainly.
Iron
when you walk through the fire, you get stronger.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Or you break. Yeah. You know, and I don't think we've gotten to a point where we've broken, but we've only gotten stronger and tested more, right? And I really applaud that message. You know, it's something that I hold dear to me, and that's why I'm more cautious.
Yeah, be down.
You know what? It's not even worth it. You know, I already know a lot of things are not worth it. I avoid going to particular neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Despite the impact that I might have on the neighborhood, I don't need to be there. Why don't you guys from that neighborhood come over here and let's have a conversation? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Of productivity for our community, right? But yeah, I'm more cautious now.
Yeah, that's cool. And that's what I was saying, you know what I mean?
Yeah, nah, certainly.
You got to be cautious because you have something, and you have the ability to make things happen. So, but you have to protect it. You know, without that, you're gonna lose all the way around. You know
certainly.
Keep it up. Anything else you want to say before we end?
You know, with ending life without parole, you know,
we got
the cure-all is not, you know, the bill that Liz Miranda presented. You know, there's other things on the table that are being explored, you know, but the overall idea is to end life without parole in Massachusetts. You know, not everybody sentenced to prison is serving a life sentence because they committed a heinous crime. You know, we look at a state like Rhode Island where it has about 25 people serving life without parole. But those 25 people, the state of Rhode Island knows their crime, and their crime was so atrocious to the state that they warranted them serving life without parole.
And that's probably what people think. And that's why it needs to be clear. Baby, people think that is, you know, if they gave them their life, it has to be something really crazy.
It does.
And you're saying it's not.
It's not.
Times,
You know, and again, it's also important that, you know, Massachusetts is supposedly a liberal state, but also it has a structure of racism occurring here. Yeah. Right now, you have that from the SJC. You know, they've admitted that in their own findings. Harvard has admitted that about the state judicial and carceral system in their findings. They were funded also by the SJC to do that research. You know what I'm saying? So Massachusetts has structural racism problems. They don't want to deal with those issues, all right? And I say that to say that I'm serving a life sentence with the eligibility of parole after 15 years. I'm categorized as either a black or brown person in the state of Massachusetts, right? I'm a Latino male, Puerto Rican. And while being in prison, I've seen other men that are white that also murdered people and are not serving life in prison. And they've murdered their best friends. They've murdered their best friends, try to murder other people in the cause. You know, some of them actually, you know, cut body parts off, and they're not serving life. So it says, what are we really doing with our life sentencing? And are we actually sentencing people really based on the atrociousness of the crime? Or we're just sentencing people to life because of the crime, because the law says that we can.
But because of the color.
But also because of the color. And I think that's something that we really need to look at, that it's also because of the color.
Are the numbers high? Are they proportionate? Are they high?
No, certainly. Certainly,
Yeah?
they're really, really high. So while I was in Norfolk, you know, you had the Lifers group that's there, right?
2-1, right?
And you look at those that are serving, excuse me?
Unit 2-1, right?
No, I was in 7-1.
I mean, the Lifers unit.
No,
they moved it?
They don't have the Lifers
Oh, they
unit
don't have it
anymore.
anymore.
They just
Right,
have,
yeah.
well, they still have the 2-1,
Yeah,
but not everybody in 2-1 is
It's life
also
now.
serving life,
That
right?
was strictly
But that's typically where most of the lifers go. But, you know, so a lot of the guys that are in the lifers group are, you know, older white guys, you know, and they've been doing time since the 80s, 70s.
I was going to say there's been some...
They've been doing it for some time, right? You rarely meet a lot of lifers that are white. Now, this is not to say that they don't get sentenced that way, but most of the people that are sentenced to life in prison are black and brown people. You know what I'm saying? You can find atrocious murders and a white person had committed that is serving life. But from my experience inside, I've seen guys that, you know, stabbed a person to death and got 12 years, you know? And it's like, how did you get 12 years for that? You know, and you stabbed them 30 times. That was not once. You stabbed them 30 times.
These are actual cases, huh?
These are actual cases, and you only got 12 years. You know what I'm saying? Again, another guy hacked his friend up and then tried to kill his friend's girlfriend. She survived. He only got 32 years. And it's like, wow, you have an opportunity, a date to get home, whereas other men that just pulled out a gun and randomly shot in the crowd that impacted a whole community and killed somebody and impacted the family, and that person is serving life. Should that person be punished? Yes. Yeah. But what are we also looking at here? If a white person stabs somebody 30 times and only gets 12 years, and a person shoots somebody and kills them with one bullet and gets life in prison, one person's white, the other person is black or brown.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's a serious issue of structural racism in the state of Massachusetts that also is part of the conversation as to why we need to end life without parole.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for viewing. What do you think about life without parole? Is 25 years enough? Please go to CellWAP's website, find a conversation to get involved in, talk to your friends, spread the word, and let's just come to, just think about this. If it was someone that you knew, is he a prisoner, or because you know him, is he now a human being? I'm Darryl Buchanan. I'd like to say thank you for showing up. Thank you, brother, for showing up. I appreciate you. Really, really appreciate it a lot. I'd like to say I love you to Taisha, Darryl, and Zayla. Peace.